The marketplace of Starport Clyra was never quiet. Traders from dozens of worlds shouted prices in strange languages. The air smelled of spices, engine oil, and something sweet that Adrian Vega couldn't name. He had been to many ports in his years as a cargo captain, but this one was different. The banners of the Solari Empire hung from the high steel arches, each shimmering with deep purple and silver threads. Adrian wasn't here for sightseeing. He was here to negotiate a cargo deal with a Solari trade minister. And Solari were not known for warm conversations. They spoke with precise words, no jokes, no smiles. Adrian had dealt with them before, but today was worse. The minister looked like someone who thought smiling might be dangerous to his health. At the far end of the long negotiation table sat Princess Lysera, dressed in a flowing silver robe that seemed to shift like liquid when she moved. She was young by Solari standards, maybe a little older than Adrian in human years. Her hair shimmered in soft shades of blue, and her eyes were bright gold, scanning the room like a scanner beam. She didn't speak during the first hour. She simply watched. Adrian's deal was going badly. The Solari minister wanted his shipment of Terran fusion crystals for half the agreed price. Half. That wasn't business. That was robbery in formal clothing. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. Minister, if I sell at that price, I might as well give the cargo away for free. The minister's thin lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile Adrian had ever seen from a Solari diplomat, and said, "Perhaps then you will have the honor of serving the Empire." Adrian hated this kind of talk. He decided to try something different, something bold, something human. He looked past the minister, straight at Princess Lysera, and said in a perfectly serious voice, "All right, here's my counteroffer. Marry me, and I'll throw in the crystals for free." The minister froze like he had been hit with a stun beam. Around the table, aides and guards turned their heads sharply. A few gasps echoed in the hall. Adrian didn't move. He just kept his gaze on the princess, wondering if she would call for security. Instead, Lysera tilted her head slightly, her gold eyes shining. Then, to everyone's shock, she smiled. It wasn't a small smile either. It was warm, almost playful. She spoke in flawless Terran English, her voice calm and clear. "I wish I could freeze this moment," she said. For a second, Adrian thought she was teasing him back, but her tone had a strange weight to it, like the words meant more than they sounded. The minister's face tightened. "Princess, this is not—" She raised her hand and the minister stopped talking. Her gaze stayed on Adrian for a heartbeat. Longer, then she turned away, returning to her formal stillness. The rest of the negotiation felt like walking through fog. Adrian managed to push the price back up. Not perfect, but better than before. The cargo deal was signed, and the Solari officials left the table. The princess left too, surrounded by her guards. But as she passed Adrian, she gave him the smallest nod, as if to say, "We will speak again." Adrian was halfway through loading his ship when he noticed her again. The docking bay was quieter now, but a faint glow from the upper balcony revealed Lysera speaking to two of her guards in a low voice. Adrian wasn't close enough to hear everything, but he caught certain words in the Solari language. "Countdown. The last thaw. Before the cycle ends." She sounded urgent. Her guards looked uneasy. Then they noticed Adrian staring up at them. The princess glanced down for just a moment, then stepped into the shadows and disappeared. Later that night, Adrian sat in his ship's lounge, a mug of strong coffee in his hands. His engineer, Nia Jansen, walked in with a data pad. "You're thinking too loud," she said, sitting across from him. "Am I?" "Yes. You've got that face you get when a job's about to turn into trouble." Adrian smirked. "Met a princess today." Nia raised an eyebrow. And she smiled at one of my terrible jokes. "That's it?" "No." She said something weird, something about freezing the moment. Nia sipped her coffee, waiting for more. "I heard her talking about a countdown," Adrian continued. and something called the last thaw. Doesn't sound like a normal royal conversation to me. Nia shrugged. Probably politics. Not our problem. Maybe, Adrian said. But the words wouldn't leave his head. He had dealt with Solari, merchants and soldiers before, but never with a princess. And certainly never with one who seemed trapped. The next morning, as Adrian prepared to leave, a small encrypted package arrived in his ship's comm system. No sender ID, just a short message in Terran English. You should leave Stellar Space soon, or you may not leave at all. Nia read it over his shoulder. See? Trouble. Adrian stared at the screen, his mind already racing. Whoever sent it knew where he was. They also knew he wasn't planning to stick around. But now, instead of making him want to leave faster, it made him want to stay longer. Something about Princess Lysera's eyes, about the way she said those words. He didn't know why, but he had the feeling that if he left now, he'd regret it for the rest of his life. That night, as his ship rested on the quiet dock, Adrian sat in the pilot's seat, staring out at the lights of Starport Clyra. Somewhere out there, the princess was preparing for something she didn't choose, and Adrian Vega, against his better judgment, knew he wasn't going anywhere just yet. The next day, Starport Clyra was busier than usual. The main plaza shimmered under artificial sunlight, and tall banners of purple and silver swayed gently in the recycled air currents. Adrian Vega walked through the crowd with no real destination. He told Nia he was going to stretch his legs, but in truth he was hoping to cross paths with Princess Lysera again. He didn't know what he'd say if he did, maybe nothing, but his instincts told him there was more to her strange words than simple politeness. He passed a row of merchant stalls selling everything from Solari silk to Terran chocolate. The merchants called out prices, waving glowing signs to draw customers closer. Yet, Adrian's attention wasn't on the wares. His eyes searched for flashes of silver fabric or hair that shimmered blue under the light. Then he saw her, Lysera, stood near the base of the Imperial Fountain, speaking quietly to a tall Solari man in deep navy robes. Two guards stood behind her, their armor polished to a mirror shine. The conversation seemed serious. Her golden eyes were sharp, her lips set in a firm line. Adrian moved closer, pretending to examine a nearby stall of crystalline ornaments. He caught fragments of the conversation in Solari language, but it was hard to piece together. He heard cycle, deep freeze, and succession. The man in navy robes gave her a short bow and walked away. Lysera turned, her gaze brushing past Adrian. She didn't seem surprised to see him there. "You follow me often, Captain Vega?" she asked, walking toward him. "Only when I think someone might owe me an explanation," Adrian replied, leaning against the stall counter. She stopped a short distance from him, the fountain's spray misting the air between them. "And what explanation do you imagine I owe you? Yesterday you smiled at my terrible joke. Then you said you wished you could freeze the moment. And last night I overheard you talking about a countdown and the last thaw. Sounds like a story worth telling." Her eyes flickered with something, amusement maybe, or calculation. "Most humans I've met are curious. You are persistent." Adrian smiled faintly. "And you're avoiding the question. For a moment." She studied him in silence. Then she gestured toward a shaded bench near the edge of the plaza. "Walk with me, Captain. But understand this. What I tell you is not for open ears." They sat in the shadow of an old Solari sculpture, its tall crystal pillars casting shifting patterns on the ground. From here, the noise of the plaza was softer. "My people," Lysera began, "have ruled the Solari Empire for thousands of years. Our rulers, we are not replaced easily. To prevent bloodshed during political changes, our ancestors created the stasis cycle." "Stasis cycle?" Adrian asked. It is both a tradition and a weapon, she said quietly. When a ruler or high noble is seen as a threat to the stability of the empire, they are persuaded to enter stasis. Their bodies are frozen in a suspended state. They do not age. They do not die. They sleep until the council decides the time is right for their return. Adrian frowned. So they put you on ice and wake you up decades later? She nodded once. Sometimes centuries later. By then, your rivals are gone, your allies are dust, and your influence is nothing. And you? Her gaze shifted to the fountain. In 3 days, I am to enter stasis. Publicly, it will be called a ceremonial renewal. Privately, it is exile. I have opposed certain council decrees, and they do not forgive easily. Adrian leaned back, exhaling slowly. And you're just going to let them? What choice do I have? She asked, her voice calm but her eyes fierce. To resist is to risk war between noble houses. My house would fall. My people would suffer. I will not cause that. For a long moment, they said nothing. The hum of the fountain filled the air. You know, Adrian said finally, humans have a bad habit of sticking their noses where they don't belong. Usually ends in trouble. I know, she said, almost smiling. It is why I thought of you after yesterday. Thought of me? She met his gaze. Because sometimes, trouble is the only thing that changes the path of history. Before Adrian could respond, one of her guards approached and bowed. Your Highness, the council summons you. Lizera rose gracefully. It seems our time is over for now. Captain Vega, thank you for the conversation. As she turned to leave, Adrian spoke quickly. If you wanted to, not freeze, is there a way? She paused. Her back was to him, but he saw her shoulders tighten slightly. Then she said, there is a research vessel in orbit. It holds the technology that controls the stasis process. But it is protected, guarded by those loyal to the council. And then she walked away without another word. Back on his ship, Adrian paced the lounge while Nia sat on the couch, arms crossed. So, she said, the princess is about to be turned into a popsicle for the next few decades, and you're thinking about getting involved. Adrian stopped pacing. It's not just politics, Nia, it's a cage, just colder. Adrian, Nia sighed. You know what happens when humans meddle in royal alien affairs? We get shot at. A lot. He smirked. When do we not get shot at? She didn't answer. He leaned against the wall, looking out the small porthole at the stars. Somewhere up there, that research ship was waiting. Somewhere up there was the key to stopping Lysera's exile. 3 days, he said quietly. That's all we have. That night, Adrian barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lysera's golden gaze, the way she'd spoken about the stasis cycle, with quiet resignation, but also a hidden spark of defiance. Humans were famous across the galaxy for being unpredictable. Maybe it was time to live up to that reputation. By morning, Adrian had made up his mind. The next morning, Adrian Vega sat in the cockpit of his freighter, Starbound Horizon, staring at the blinking lights on his navigation panel. Outside the docking window, the sprawling metal curves of Starport Clera shone under the false daylight. 3 days. That was all Princess Lysera had before they sealed her away in stasis. 3 days before she would vanish for decades. Nia walked in with a mug of steaming calf. You look like someone just told you your favorite engine blew out, she said. Setting the mug on the control panel, Adrian glanced at her. We're going to need information, lots of it. Nia sighed. I knew you wouldn't let this go. So what's the plan? Storm the royal palace with a wrench and a smile? Not exactly. Adrian tapped a display screen, bringing up a holographic map of Solari orbital traffic. Lysera mentioned a research ship. That's our target. We find it, we figure out how it works, and we make sure it can't hold her for decades. Nia raised an eyebrow. And if the Solari catch us poking around? Adrian gave a small shrug. We run, fast! It took most of the morning to dig through public docking records, hidden in layers of official language that only made sense if you'd been dealing with Solari bureaucracy for years. Luckily, Adrian had. There, he said finally, pointing at a faint marker on the map. CSV Valoran. Officially, it's a medical research vessel. In reality, it's the nerve center for the stasis process. Nia leaned closer. Looks like it's in high orbit, guarded by at least 2 destroyers. Not exactly welcoming. We won't go in loud, Adrian said. We'll go in quiet. Nia crossed her arms. You mean sneak in? Exactly. That afternoon, Adrian visited one of his old trade contacts, a short, broad-shouldered Threxian named Murok. The Threxian owned a repair bay in the shadow of Dock 17, where ships came to be patched up after unfortunate accidents. Murok, Adrian said, stepping through the heavy metal doorway. I need a favor. Murok glanced up from a half-disassembled shuttle. His 4 eyes narrowed. Your favors usually come with trouble, Vega. Only the exciting kind, Adrian replied. I need access codes for the Valoran, and maybe a transport clearance for a maintenance inspection. Murok tilted his head. That ship belongs to the Royal Science Fleet. If I give you those codes, and someone finds out, they won't. Adrian cut in. I just need them for a short trip, in and out. The Threxian grumbled something in his native tongue, then finally said, You owe me, and not just credits. You'll take a shipment of rare alloys to Vega Station next month, no questions. Done. By evening. Adrian had what he needed. A clearance packet that would get him close enough to the Valoran without setting off alarms, at least at first. When he returned to the ship, Nia was already checking their stealth systems. You're serious? About this, she said. Dead serious. She shook her head, but there was a small smile on her lips. Fine. But if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you for the rest of my life. The next day, Adrian sent a formal request to visit the Valoran for cargo safety inspections. The Solari Orbital Authority approved it, likely because no one expected a human trader to be stupid enough to meddle with a royal science vessel. As they prepared for launch, a soft chime came from the ship's comm system. Adrian opened the channel. And there she was. Princess Lysera's face appeared in a small hologram, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. You move quickly, Captain Vega, she said. You moved toward an icebox, Princess, he replied. She gave the smallest smile. You think you can stop the Council's will? I think I can try, Adrian said. And humans have a bad history of succeeding at impossible things. For a moment, she looked as if she might argue. Then she said, The stasis control is in the Valoran's core chamber. You'll need a dual-key sequence to alter it, one from the chief scientist and one from the ship's AI. That sounds complicated. It is, she said simply, which is why it's never been done before. The connection ended abruptly. Hours later, the star-bound horizon eased away from starport Clyra, its engines humming softly. Adrian kept the speed slow, blending in with traffic heading toward the upper orbital lanes. From there, the Valoran hung like a silver spear against the black of space, its long hull glinting in the light of the nearby star. 2 Solari destroyers patrolled nearby, their shapes sleek and menacing. Still time to turn back, Nia said, scanning the defense grid. Not a chance, Adrian replied. As they approached, a voice crackled over comms. Unidentified Terran. Vessel. State your purpose. This is Captain Adrian Vega of the Starbound Horizon, Adrian replied smoothly. We're here for a scheduled maintenance inspection. Clearance packet Alpha 7-3. There was a pause, then the voice returned. Clearance confirmed. Docking Bay 6. Adrian shot Nia a quick grin. See? Easy. Too easy, Nia muttered. Inside the Valoran, the air was cool and smelled faintly of sterilizing agents. Solari crew members moved with quiet efficiency, their pale robes brushing against the polished metal floors. A tall officer greeted them at the airlock. "This way, Captain. We will escort you to the inspection areas." Adrian kept his expression neutral. "Of course." They walked through long corridors lined with glowing panels. Behind the officer's back, Naya subtly mapped the ship's layout on her wrist display. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. Then, just as they passed a sealed bulkhead, Adrian caught sight of something through a small viewing port, a chamber filled with tall, glass-like pods. Inside each one, a Solari figure floated in suspension, unmoving, frozen in time. His jaw tightened. This wasn't just science. This was a prison. The tour ended in a brightly lit cargo bay where the officer explained the ship's safety measures in great detail. Adrian nodded politely, but his mind was already elsewhere. When they returned to the docking corridor, Nia whispered, "I marked the core chamber's location. We'll have to come back during a shift change. Less security then." Adrian nodded. "Tomorrow. We do this tomorrow." Back in the starbound horizon, he stared out at the Valoran's sleek shape against the stars. Somewhere in that ship was the key to stopping Lysera's exile. Somewhere in there was a choice, one that could make enemies of the Solari Council forever. But Adrian Vega wasn't thinking about politics. He was thinking about the look in the princess's eyes. When she said she wished she could freeze the moment, 3 days had become 2, and the clock was ticking. The starbound horizon floated quietly in the shadow of the massive Solari vessel. From the outside, the Valoran looked peaceful, like a silver blade resting in the dark. But Adrian Vega knew better. Inside, it was a fortress of science, politics, and secrets. They had one night to prepare. One chance to get in, reach the core chamber, and stop the stasis program before Princess Lysera was sealed away. Nia sat at the main console, adjusting the infiltration plan. "We have exactly 14 minutes during the next shift change," she said. "That's when security in the lower corridors will be lightest." "And after that?" Adrian asked. "After that, the patrols double, and we'll be stuck explaining why 2 humans are walking around restricted areas." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "Then we just have to make those 14 minutes count." The next day, they docked again with the Valoran, officially to complete the inspection report. The same tall Solari officer greeted them with polite efficiency. This time, Adrian carried a small maintenance kit, its compartments hiding tools far more useful for bypassing doors than fixing them. Nia carried a datapad filled with fake diagnostic charts. The inspection began as before, slow and formal. They walked through corridors, checked machinery, and nodded at meaningless explanations. But when the officer stopped to answer a crew member's question, Adrian caught Nia's eye. It was time. They slipped down a side corridor, moving quickly, but not running. Their steps echoed softly in the quiet passage. Nia checked her wrist display, guiding them deeper into the restricted section. "This way," she whispered, turning down a narrower hallway. They reached a security door marked with Solari warning symbols. 2 guards stood at either side, their armor gleaming under the lights. Adrian stepped forward, putting on his best confident smile. "Captain Adrian Vega, Terran Trade Commission. We've been sent to check the stasis core's environmental systems." One guard tilted his head. "That is not on the schedule." "It's an emergency request," Adrian replied smoothly. "Council orders, something about avoiding contamination before the royal ceremony." The guards exchanged a glance. Then, one of them tapped a comm device on his wrist. After a few tense seconds, he nodded. "Proceed." Adrian and Nia walked through, careful not to show their relief. Inside, the air was cooler, the walls lined with shimmering panels. The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber filled with rows of crystalline stasis pods. Blue light pulsed, gently from each one, like the slow heartbeat of a sleeping giant. At the center of the room stood the core control console, its surface alive with glowing symbols. Naya moved to the panel, her fingers flying across the interface. "I can get into the secondary systems," she said, "but the main controls are locked. We need the dual keys Lysera mentioned, which means finding the chief scientist and convincing the ship's AI to cooperate," Adrian muttered. They didn't have to search far for the scientist. A Solari in a long white coat entered the chamber carrying a data crystal. His silver hair was tied back, and his expression was sharp and calculating. He froze when he saw them. "Who are you? This area is restricted." Adrian stepped forward, lowering his voice. "We're here on behalf of Princess Lysera." The scientist's eyes narrowed. "Dangerous words, human. The Council would do nothing if they didn't know," Adrian interrupted. "But if you don't want her frozen for decades, you'll listen." For a moment, the scientist said nothing. Then, with a slow breath, he approached the console. "You do not understand the risks. Altering the cycle could destabilize the entire chamber." "We'll take that risk," Adrian said. "Just give us the key." The scientist hesitated, then slid the crystal into a slot on the console. A deep tone echoed through the chamber. "That's one," Naya said. "Now we just need the AI." Adrian looked at the nearest wall panel. "Computer, this is Captain Adrian Vega, authorized by the Solari Science Council for Override Protocol." A smooth, emotionless voice replied, "Authorization unrecognized. State your purpose." "To adjust the stasis cycle for Princess Lysera," Adrian said. "Denied," the AI responded instantly. "Council orders are final." Adrian gritted his teeth. "Listen, your princess is being locked away because she stood up for her people. That's not preservation. That's punishment. And if you follow those orders, you're helping the wrong side of history." There was a long pause. Then the AI said, "Historical precedent noted. Initiating secondary override channel. Voice. Confirmation required from bonded protector." Adrian blinked. "Bonded what now?" The scientist's eyes widened. "It is an ancient Solari tradition. If she has claimed you as her protector, the AI must accept your override." Adrian remembered the parade yesterday when Lysera had jokingly, or maybe not, introduced him to an aide as her bonded protector. "I confirm," Adrian said firmly. A chime rang out and the console's locks disengaged. Naya's fingers danced across the controls. "I can set the stasis duration to symbolic, only a few hours instead of decades. The ceremony will look the same, but she won't lose her life to the freeze." Adrian grinned. "Do it." But just as Nia was about to finalize the changes, alarms blared. Red lights flared across the chamber. "Security breach," the AI announced. "Unauthorized personnel detected." Adrian groaned. "Guess our 14 minutes are up." The chamber doors burst open, and half a dozen armored guards rushed in. The scientist quickly stepped aside, pretending to focus on a datapad. "Step away from the console," one guard barked. Adrian raised his hands slowly. "Easy. We were just making sure the princess's pod was in perfect condition." "By overriding the cycle?" the guard asked coldly. Nia whispered, 10 seconds, Adrian." Adrian looked at the guards. "You could arrest us, or you could remember that the council will want everything to go perfectly tomorrow. Do you really want the blame if something malfunctions because you interrupted an inspection?" The guards hesitated. It was just enough time. Nia hit the final command and the console confirmed. Stasis duration, adjusted. The guards moved forward, but Adrian and Nia stepped away from the console. "Their job done. We're leaving," Adrian said calmly. "No harm done." The guards escorted them back toward the docking bay. Adrian could feel their suspicion, but no one made a move to stop them completely. Back on the starbound horizon, Naya dropped into the pilot's chair. That was too close. Close, Adrian said, strapping in. Is still enough. Out. The viewport, the Valoran hung silent in space, its fate, and Lysera's, now quietly changed. Tomorrow, the ceremony would begin, and Adrian intended to be there to see it. The research ship loomed in the distance, its silver hull shining under the artificial lights of Sealer's orbital docks. From afar, it looked calm and still, but Adrian knew it was anything but peaceful inside. The crew on that vessel was loyal to the Solari Council, and they believed that freezing Princess Lysera for decades was the only way to protect the Empire. To them, Adrian and his crew were intruders. Adrian stood with Naya at the edge of the docking platform, their borrowed, ceremonial robes fluttering in the station's light artificial breeze. Lysera walked between them, her posture tall and regal. She was calm, but Adrian caught the way her fingers twitched slightly, a small sign of tension. This is it, Lysera whispered softly so only they could hear. Once we step inside, there will be no turning back. If they realize our plan too soon, we will be detained. Adrian gave her a half smile. Then let's make sure they don't realize anything until it's too late. They boarded the research ship under the guise of a diplomatic escort for the princess's pre-stasis blessing. The corridors were narrow and gleaming, lined with panels that hummed with hidden machinery. Solari guards flanked them, their polished armor reflecting the corridor lights. Adrian's mind was already racing through the plan. While Lysera kept the crew busy with ceremonial rites, he and Nia would slip into the control room where the stasis core was located. From there, they could alter the freezing process. They arrived at the central chamber, a high-ceilinged room filled with an eerie, blue glow. In the middle stood the stasis capsule, tall, smooth, and shaped like a crystal coffin. Tubes and wires ran from it into the floor and ceiling, pulsing with cold energy. A senior Solari scientist, with skin patterned like silver frost, approached them. "Princess Lysera," he said respectfully, "it is time to begin preparations." Lysera stepped forward with a graceful nod. "I wish to conduct the blessing of continuity first," she announced. The scientist hesitated. The ritual wasn't necessary, but it was traditional. No one could refuse it without appearing disrespectful. As Lysera began chanting in the melodic Solari tongue, the crew gathered in a semicircle. Adrian caught Nia's eye. That was their signal. They quietly slipped away through a side corridor, moving quickly but silently. The deeper they went, the colder the air became. The hum of the machinery grew louder until they reached a locked door with a glowing control pad. Nia pulled a small device from her robe pocket. "Give me 30 seconds," she whispered. Sparks danced on the pad as she worked, bypassing the lock. With a soft beep, the door slid open, revealing the stasis control room. Rows of screens filled the walls, displaying streams of data. In the center stood the stasis core, a tall cylindrical chamber of swirling frost. The temperature was so low that Adrian's breath became visible instantly. Nia slid into the main console, her fingers flying over the alien interface. "I found the freeze protocol," she said. "It's set for 80 years. We can change it to symbolic mode, only a few hours." "Do it," Adrian said. She worked fast, translating Solari symbols into human logic. But before she could finish, a blaring alarm filled the room. Red lights flashed, and a metallic voice echoed, "Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" Adrian cursed under his breath. "They know!" The door slammed open, and 2 guards rushed in, weapons raised. Adrian stepped forward, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Easy," he said calmly. "We're just checking the settings." "You wouldn't want the princess to freeze incorrectly, would you?" The guards didn't look convinced. Naya kept working, her hands moving faster. Adrian's mind raced. He needed to stall them. "You might want to tell your captain," Adrian said with a confident smirk. that humans have a device that can disrupt stasis tech. If you freeze her now without the proper adjustments, your precious princess might never wake up." That wasn't true, but he delivered the lie with the kind of conviction that made even the guards pause. One of them spoke into his communicator. "Control! The human says—" Before he could finish, Nia hit the final key. The console beeped, and the freezing time changed from 80 years to 3 hours. "Done," Nia whispered. "We need to get back before they realize." The guards seemed uncertain, but they didn't have time to act before Adrian and Nia pushed past them, running back toward the ceremonial chamber. Inside, Lizara was still speaking, her voice calm and rhythmic. When she saw Adrian return, her eyes flickered with relief for just a second. He gave her a subtle nod. The plan had worked. The ceremony continued without incident. When it came time for Lysera to enter the capsule, the scientist initiated. The program, without realizing the time, had been altered. Frost swirled around the princess as the capsule sealed. Her eyes locked with Adrian's one last time before the glass clouded over. The crowd bowed their heads in silent respect. 3 hours later, the capsule hissed open. A mist of cold air escaped, and Lysera stepped out gracefully, as if nothing had happened. The crew gasped. Many had never seen anyone return from stasis so quickly. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. The senior scientist looked alarmed. "Princess, the process—" Lysera raised a hand. "The process is exactly as it should be," she said firmly. "My symbolic freeze is complete." Adrian stood quietly at the edge, watching her take control of the moment. She had turned their deception into a public display of strength. Nia leaned over to him and whispered, "We pulled it off." Adrian smirked. "Yeah, now let's get out of here before someone decides to check the logs." As the crew dispersed, Lysera walked over to him. Her voice was low, almost too soft to hear. "You kept your word. You saved me." Adrian gave a casual shrug, though his eyes were warm. "You laughed at my joke. I couldn't let the galaxy take you away after that." The stasis chamber was quiet now, the icy mist gone, replaced by the soft hum of normal ship systems. Lysera stood at the center looking calm, but Adrian could see the weight of the last few hours in her eyes. The crew of the research ship watched, her from a distance, still whispering about what had happened. Some looked impressed, others looked confused. But none dared to question the princess directly, not after the way she had carried herself when she stepped out of the capsule. Adrian leaned against the wall with Nia beside him. He kept his voice low. "We bought her freedom, but for how long?" Nia didn't answer immediately. She was scanning the corridor, checking for anyone listening. "The council won't like this," she said finally. "If they think we tampered with the freeze, they'll come after all of us." Adrian's gaze moved back to Lysera. "Then we'll just have to make sure they can't." Later, in the ship's private observation room, the three of them met alone. Through the wide glass window, space stretched out like an endless ocean, stars glittering like scattered diamonds. Lysera placed her hands on the table. "I owe you both more than I can repay," she began. "You risked your lives to stop something that would have taken me away for decades. But we are not safe yet?" Nia crossed her arms. "You're right. The council will either try to redo the stasis or remove you from the throne entirely." Adrian tilted his head. "So what's the move, princess? Do we run or do we fight?" Lysera's eyes shone faintly in the dim light. "Neither," she said. "We go to the heart of the Empire, the Grand Hall of the Kellery, and show them that I am not their prisoner. If I speak before the people, the council cannot silence me without losing their power." Adrian gave a slow smile. "You want to walk into the most secure building in your empire surrounded by people who might want you gone?" "Yes," Lysera said simply, "because if I run now, I will be running for the rest of my life." Nia let out a long breath. "All right, Then we need a plan. The journey to the Solari capital was tense. Adrian's ship, the Dawn Voyager, carried them through the cold void, each day bringing them closer to the glittering blue planet that housed the Empire's core. On the second night, Adrian found Lysera alone on the upper deck, watching the stars. She didn't turn when he stepped up beside her. "Thinking about what you're going to say?" he asked. She shook her head slightly. "Thinking about what I must become. A leader who hides is no leader at all." Adrian studied her profile, the faint reflection of the stars dancing in her eyes. "You already proved you're not afraid to face them," he said. "Now you just have to prove it in front of everyone." Lysera smiled faintly. "And you? Will you stand with me?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "Until the last star fades." When they arrived at the capital, the sight was breathtaking. The city floated above the planet's surface, suspended by massive energy spires. Towers of glass and silver stretched into the sky, and great sky bridges connected them like delicate threads. But beneath the beauty, Adrian felt the tension. Solari patrol ships shadowed their arrival, and the docking platform was lined with armored guards. The Grand Hall was even more imposing. A vast chamber with a domed ceiling, it could hold thousands. At the center was a raised platform, where the council sat in a half-circle, their robes heavy with ceremonial gems. The crowd filled the lower levels, their voices a low murmur. When Lysera stepped forward, silence rippled through the hall. The council elder, a tall Solari with crystalline patterns on his face, stood. "Princess Lysera," he said in a cold, formal tone, "you returned from stasis far sooner than planned. Explain yourself." Lysera stepped onto the central dais. Her voice was clear and strong, carrying through the vast chamber. "I return not because of a mistake, but because my people need me now. You claim to protect the Empire by removing me for decades. I say the Empire is strongest when its leaders stand with their people, in the present, not in the distant future." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, others whispered doubt. The elder's eyes narrowed. Tradition is a guide, not a chain," Lysera interrupted. Her words echoed in the chamber. "If we freeze ourselves whenever danger comes, then we abandon the very world we claim to defend. I will not vanish into ice while my people face the storms of the galaxy." Adrian, standing at the edge of the hall with Nia, watched as the crowd's energy shifted. She was winning them over. The elder's voice hardened. "And if the council votes to send you back into stasis?" Lysera raised her chin. "Then they will do so in front of every citizen here and every world watching this broadcast. Let them see if their leaders would rather silence a voice than face the truth." Murmur of approval swept the crowd. The council exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, another council member rose. "Perhaps a trial period is in order. Let the princess serve openly for 1 year. If she proves her leadership, the question of stasis will be put aside." The crowd erupted in applause. The elder, clearly displeased, had no choice but to agree. That night, in the quiet of the Dawn Voyager, the three of them sat together. The stars outside seemed brighter than before. "You did it," Nia said with a grin. "You stared down the council and walked away stronger." Lysera shook her head. "We did it. Without you two, I would still be trapped in that capsule." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "So what now?" "Now," Lysera said, a small smile on her lips, "I lead. And I make sure the next time someone tries to lock me away, the people themselves will rise to stop it." Adrian raised a brow. "And us?" Lysera's eyes met his. "I will need allies I can trust. Stay. Help me shape the future." Nia smirked. "Looks like we're not retiring anytime soon." Adrian chuckled softly. "Guess not. All right, princess. Lead the way." As the ship drifted through the stars, the three of them looked ahead. not at the dangers that might come, but at the possibilities waiting beyond the next sunrise. For the first time in a long while, Adrian felt something he hadn't let himself feel before.